All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks and Monarch. I am hot off the practice field, so excuse me if I'm a little bit exacerbated, but I'm also very excited because today we're doing our opponent preview a day early with my good friend, Old Saint Nick Farabaugh, one of my very good friends and favorite resources of the Steelers beat reporter, for Penn Live and host of the Steelers Breakdown. Sir, you do some of the best work in the business, some of the best insight, and also fantastic human being. My favorite combination for these opponent previews. So welcome to the show finally, pal. How the hell are you doing?
I am doing so well, Taylor. Thanks for having me on. Me and Taylor have had some good, fun nights in Mobile and the Combine and different places. This is the first time, actually, I'll be in a press box with you, which is crazy to think about, but it really is. This will be the first time. So this is going to be a ton of fun, man. Just like you, though. I mean, I just got off the practice field not too long ago, just got out of the locker room, so I'm feeling it too. I had a 40-minute drive home. Wonderful. You gotta love practice in Pittsburgh. I gotta love it. The fall leaves are, they're changing, they're falling down. It's wonderful.
Similar environments. We're getting that here too. A little bit of color on the leaves. We love to see it. Now, I give my perspective on Patriots practice because we did get the injury report very recently. So I'll let you kind of break down the Steelers side of it. But from a Patriots perspective, Keion White once again did not participate today due to an illness. That is going to be the second week in a row that he has dealt with that. Christian Barmore was limited today, was not injury related. K'Lavon Chaisson, along with Keion White, was actually not at practice. He wound up showing up later, but he was limited with a hamstring injury. A lot of guys that were limited, actually. Christian Gonzalez, finally back at practice. That's a huge step in the right direction for him. He's going to be important, obviously, this week against DK Metcalf. He was limited, of course, with a hamstring as well. Fellow top corner Carlton Davis also limited, him due to an Achilles. We saw him kind of get banged up briefly during the Dolphins game, but tucked it out and came back in. Also on the list of limited, they're all limited. I'm just going to go through at this point. Harold Landry with a foot. Marte Mapu with a neck. We saw that last week as well. Morgan Moses with a foot as well. Apparently, he was actually in a boot after the game, so that's definitely going to be one to monitor. Jack Westover, the fullback, who pretty much does everything at the tight end position, he was limited with a hamstring. And Jared Wilson, who had a really impressive game last week, he was limited with a thigh injury. Nick, you want to break down what was going on at the Steelers practice, what the vibe was kind of like down there?
They're pretty banged up. That is something that they really have kind of dealt with the first 2 weeks. So I'll just go through the injury report. Starting safety, Deshaun Elliott, MCL sprain, did not practice, not expecting him to play this week. He's missed last week. He's probably going to be out this week as well. Joey Porter Jr. has a hamstring. He missed last week. With that, Tomlin called him questionable at best. So not really feeling like he's going to play. Alex Highsmith has a high ankle sprain. He's out already. He was ruled out. Derek Harmon's the big one. He is back at practice. He had an MCL sprain he suffered during the final preseason game. He has missed his first 2 weeks. Mike Tomlin also grouped him in the questionable best part, but he seemed really enthusiastic this morning and said, hey, I might have a shot to get out there this week. So even if he does play, I think it's going to be on a limited snap count, but would be absolutely huge for the Steelers considering what has been just a disastrous run defense. Backup guard, Max Sharping has a knee injury. That's new. We haven't seen that a ton. And Patrick Queen was a full participant, but is battling an oblique strain right now. But he will probably play. Darius Slay also didn't practice. That was just rest related, but he's also battling a shoulder issue. So they're banged up. There's other guys on IR that I didn't mention. They lost key reserve defensive lineman Isaiah Loudermilk, who has been filling in for Harmon. He's on injured reserve. They're down 2 quarterbacks, Will Howard and Skylar Thompson. Both are on IR. So they're pretty banged up right now, all things considered. But things are getting a little healthier. Derek Harmon will be a huge addition for the Steelers' front.
Absolutely. That's exciting, man, especially just his story alone. And also he was one of my favorite prospects in this draft. So very happy for him, even if Patriots fans may not be that excited if he winds up on the field. Now, before we get into some of the matchups and the questions I've got for you, I first want to kind of get your overarching view of this matchup. These are two teams coming in 1-1. Obviously, Patriots coming off a win. Gritty win. It wasn't pretty, as Stephon Diggs said afterwards, but Mike Vrabel had preached all week, hey, we want to get into a dogfight and win. They were obviously able to do that. Drake Maye's best performance, I think, of his career. The defense definitely had some things you want to tighten up tackling-wise, but the pass rush really brought it towards the end of the game. So from a Steelers perspective, because the Patriots, they said the theme this week is consistency. They got a good win, but obviously against a pretty crippled Miami team in terms of just how they're functioning as an organization. So the Steelers now, obviously, another legendary franchise in the midst of some changes on their own. How do you feel about them, again, from more of an all-22 view heading into this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers are a team that has not played well. They're lucky to be 1-1. They could have easily lost to the Jets in week 1. Aaron Rodgers kind of put the team on his back in a large way, which did not see that coming, but it happened. And then last week, we kind of had the coming to earth performance. But here's the kind of thing with the Steelers. Last week, they didn't run the ball well. They didn't defend the run well. They didn't defend the pass well. And they didn't pass the ball well. They didn't do anything well. They didn't do special teams well either. Obviously, Caleb Johnson, you saw that. Everyone probably saw that. Letting the kickoff go into the end zone, giving the Seahawks a free touchdown. You know, you look at the game and you kind of watch the Steelers-Seahawks game and you're like, it was kind of closer than you think, but really it was a butt whooping up and down the field in the trenches on both sides of the ball. The Steelers have struggled. They're better than They're better than this, is what I will say. They're talented. They have talent. Obviously, they have name brand talent, but they are just more talented than they played. Coaching, injuries, different things have kind of contributed to that. But the Steelers right now are kind of focused on fixing some things. Communication on defense is a big one that Juan Thornhill, Darius Slay, Mike Tomlin talked about yesterday and today. Offensively, they just want to be more fluid. The Steelers have actually been able to move the football a little bit offensively, maybe more than you would think. They have some playmakers that can get really good yak. That's been a big part of their offense. They haven't put a ton on Rodgers' plate. They're going to be big on play action, obviously. Rodgers against the Jets, 6 of 8 for 75 yards and 3 touchdowns on play action. That's kind of what they want to be. But they got to run the ball a little better to be a more efficient offense. That's kind of the big thing. But they are really good in the red zone, so don't let them get in the red zone. And really don't let them get over 50 because – Chris Boswell has been – it's either him or Brandon Aubrey, one or two best kickers in football. So that's kind of been the big thing. But the Steelers have kind of been a little bit in disarray, all over the place, frazzled, but somehow still kind of making plays. It's a very odd combination. But they look definitely out of sorts for sure.
And respectfully, that kind of feels like what we've gotten from, the Steelers in recent years, where obviously we know they're always good enough. They're probably going to make the playoffs. But with a coach like Mike Tomlin, who is regarded understandably and fairly as one of the best head coaches in the league, it feels odd. We know the quarterback situation's been tough and it hasn't been easy. And there's obviously your stars are getting older, but what are your thoughts on 2025 Mike Tomlin? Do you feel that he is putting players in best positions to succeed? Do you feel like he's getting the most out of what sometimes isn't the most talented Steelers rosters that we've seen in recent years? I'm just very curious what your perspective is on a legendary coach, considering he's in a rut of just not meeting the expectations that I think most people have of him.
No, I don't think he's putting people in the right positions. They play a bunch of cover 1 and cover 3, and they're static. They don't rotate. They don't disguise. What they have done this year that's different than last year is they start to send blitzes. Last year they were very cover 3, cover 1, win with 4, and they wouldn't blitz at all. This year they're sending the heat. They have the 4th highest blitz rate in the NFL right now. But it's like they get very close to your quarterback. Your quarterback's going to get rattled. He's going to get smacked around, so better keep your composure or try and extend plays. But what really happens is the Steelers are just a second late or really a point too late. This happened multiple times against the Seahawks and against the Jets where Justin Fields and Sam Darnold just stuck in there for the extra, 10th of second, fired it, and the Steelers got burnt deep. That's because the Steelers don't do anything to kind of move their eyes anywhere, kind of make them take that second look and process. The Steelers have tried a lot of different things up front this year. They're trying to evolve in terms of what they do up front. TJ Watt's playing over the guards now. They have a 3 outside linebacker package. That they call their Bronco package. That's a little new. They don't run as much of their 3 safety nickel anymore. They run more traditional nickel. Jalen Ramsey has kind of been their nickel safety, outside corner, do-it-all type of guy. But the basics of what they do is they're too static. They don't play much press, so it's a lot of off-band, cover 1, cover 3. It's just very odd. You see a lot of cover 1, cover 3 teams that run it, that they disguise it and they mix up their cover 2 quarters, cover 6 answers. The Steelers do have those change-ups, but it's never like a mix-up, right? You're never really looking one way and expecting another. They have run a lot more quarters this year. That is something that has been a common thing through 2 games. They run quarters about 18% of the time this year. Last year, I think they ran it about 4% of the time. So they've run a lot more quarters. But again, there's not like switching between it. And I talked with Juan Thornhill today, and he basically said, hey, it's mainly because they don't trust us to communicate right now. And we're blowing coverages. If you go and watch the first touchdown the Seahawks got on them, Torrey Horton and Jackson Smith-Njigba run a simple Yankee concept against cover 1. And you see Darius Slay and Juan Thornhill cut down on the low cross, which is JSN, and it leaves Ramsey having to run all the way across the field to get Horton. Well, what was supposed to happen was Slay was supposed to peel off, insert up top, and then Ramsey was supposed to kind of become the free, and then you would have Thornhill taking JSN, and it would have covered that up. And the Steelers had a blitz call that worked perfectly. Queen was going to get a sack, but that miscommunication leads to a touchdown instead of a sack that would have ended the drive. So that's a very key thing, and that's been the thing with the Steelers is they have struggled getting off the field on third down because they're so static. These teams just dial up their cover 3 and cover 1 beaters. It's really very easy to do that. It doesn't matter what the Steelers have done blitz-wise, and they're doing a bunch of different wraparounds, Watts getting free, and, these teams are utilizing triple teams and chips and doubles to take away TJ. I think TJ is not as explosive as he once was, but he still is. When he gets one-on-one opportunities, he will wreck the game still, and teams are just kind of taking him away, and the Steelers are like, okay, we'll blitz off that, and they're getting a lot of free runners, but there's nothing happening on the back end. So the front doesn't match the coverage. And so Mike T's defense, and this is Mike T's defense, not TA's defense, not Terrell Austin's defense. It is Mike Tomlin's defense and is regarded as that around the league. He's not done a good job of putting these guys into good positions. Keanu Benton, for example, is playing at nose tackle, and he gets washed 3 to 4 yards back every play. I like Keanu Benton as a shade, a kind of 1-tech, 3-tech type. He's not a nose that can take on doubles, and he gets blown off the ball. And so there's a lot of issues there in the run defense. Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen have not played well, and the Steelers called the scheme like they have good coverage linebackers, and those two have not been very good in coverage. And then offensively, he's on just an all-time stinker of a run right now. Randy Fiedner to Matt Canada to Arthur Smith. Smith is by far the best of those 3, but he's still not someone that I would consider in the top echelon of OCs. And so the offensive stuff is kind of different. They're actually creative on offense, but he's like too creative. Like last week, there was a 3rd and 2 where they came on the field in empty 13 personnel, which I'm not against if you want to be an empty 13 personnel. However, the running back should not be Kenneth Gainwell, and the lone wide receiver should not be Scotty Miller. What are we doing?
What?
Yeah, right. Week 1, Kenneth Gainwell outsnaps Jalen Warren. Like, what is that? Like, Jalen
What is
Warren,
going on with the that's a different question. The
Right.
backfield situation in Pittsburgh has been one of the most confusing storylines in the NFL. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to say that.
It is. And you saw it last week when Warren just dominated drives and would drive the Steelers down the field on his own, and then Gainwell would come in and drives would just kill the drive. Like, this Steelers team has some potential, and they have talent I think they can utilize. But the coaches are just doing a terrible job of putting these guys in the positions to win, and doing a really bad job leaving these guys, specifically on defense. The defensive coaching has been brutal. They lose on alignment so many times. It's not like they don't have issues talent-wise, but there's so many issues that they have to kind of corral with.
I'll actually go to the run defense, because when I was watching, they're getting gashed on outside zone. Like 2 weeks in a row. I know there was one defensive line shift where they literally shift away from where the run is going and get gashed because there's no one there. So from your perspective overall, why have they had so much trouble? I know Justin Fields also had some success with some read option stuff, but it felt like at one point Tomlin must have gone to TJ Watt and been like, all right, we're going to stop this real quick. I don't care who has the ball. You go to Justin Fields, blow his shit up, and then we'll see if they want to keep calling that. They still had success on it, though. So what exactly is going on with the Steelers' run defense? Now, the Patriots also, for more perspective, have struggled with outside zone. And it's understandable because they run a ton of stuff. They run power, they run man, they run, trap. So there's a lot of things, and it's hard to be a consistent outside zone team. So why they struggled against that concept specifically? And do you think if the Patriots went towards more of a downhill running game, would that also be successful, do you think?
It's interesting because the Steelers have, if you look at the runs, a lot of these teams are right-handed, right? A lot of zone runs are to the right. Everything's going left. They're just sending it opposite to TJ Watt. And they're saying, okay, we're going to run this way, and that guy is not going to make any plays. Now, TJ Watt, because he is such an animal, still comes from the backside sometimes and makes TFLs. It is what he is. And the Steelers, you talk about run defense. There was not one play against the Seahawks. There were 3 plays. They stem the wrong way. They get hit the opposite way because Darnold flips it, and they get smacked for 15-plus yards just because the alignment's wrong. It's not because they get kicked up front. They go the wrong way, and it just messes it all up. That happened 3 times against the Seahawks, and then the touchdown run, a 19-yard touchdown run on 3rd and goal from the 19. It was 3rd and goal from the 19. They pitch it to Kenneth Walker out of the gun, and he wins to the edge and scores.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So what happens is you see Peyton Wilson and Juan Thornhill. Peyton Wilson turns his back to the play, and they are communicating the call to each other as the ball is snapped. Both of them are late to get over to the edge, and because they didn't communicate, they are both a step late. Walker gets the edge. Like, this stuff is not because you're getting blown off the ball. It's because communication is failing. And so communication is like the biggest thing in the Steelers defense right now. Pass game, run game, biggest thing. Outside of that, they are still struggling to get off blocks. And I think that's been the biggest thing. But it's specifically combo blocks. It's like if you don't double team them, they will generally be able to hold up. Cam Hayward is still a monster against one-on-one blocks. Y.A. Black's been pretty good as a run defender. Pete Q and Peyton Wilson have just been disastrous with their eyes. They've been really bad processors. They've been all over the place. It's like they're playing with, without kind of knowing what's going on. And these guys are free flow kind of speed backers. They don't deconstruct blocks. And so that's been a real issue. I could not have imagined a worse start to the year for Peyton Wilson. He's been awful. Teams have just run behind Keanu Benton and Peyton Wilson and have gashed them. The Steelers used Cole Holcomb a little bit more as a result. And Holcomb actually played really well. So maybe Cole Holcomb is going to be part of that. I think in the long term, I think Jawan Bentley, who they just signed, is going to be part of their solution to that. They let Aaron Rodgers walk. The Steelers lost their kind of run-stuffing inside linebacker Malik Harrison in week 1. He's on IR right now. So I think that screwed up some of their plans in the run-stuffing game. But Cole Holcomb has shown a real kind of impetus here. He's coming back from a very serious knee injury, but he's had a great summer, and he has kind of earned his way on the field. So it might be less Peyton Wilson this week and more Cole Holcomb, which is something to think about. I think, Keanu Benton, though, has been the biggest issue. And this guy's not a nose tackle, man. I mean, he's 6'4", 310, and you're like, he could be. But he just gets cratered 3 to 4 yards back into the linebackers. He gets absolutely washed out of plays 2 gaps over. There have been multiple plays where he gets thrown to the ground and takes out the other 4-eye. Like, it is crazy. We have seen that happen before. He takes out the linebackers. The Steelers have started to adjust to that a little bit, adjusting, kind of blitzing the strong side safety or sending nickel blitzes and trying to get some numbers in there. And they lead the NFL right now in stacked box rate. And so they stack the box and still can't stop it. Last week, they were much better down to down. In terms of just stopping the run. But they allowed 4 explosive runs, and that was kind of the big thing. So if they can just get better down and down, stop the explosives. They also haven't tackled well in the 3rd level. So Thornhill and Clark and Slay and Ramsey and Porter and Eccles, all those guys have struggled to tackle. So when you get out of the gate past the 2nd level, it has turned into more big gains because the secondary is not tackled well. The Steelers have the 2nd worst missed tackle rate in the NFL right now. Because of
behind the Patriots? I'm pretty sure it's behind the Patriots.
Right. So it's probably right behind the Patriots. But, I mean, that's kind of the big thing for the Steelers is wrapping up in space if you're the secondary, and the front needs to be better. I think the Steelers, they haven't been tested a lot by gap stuff, but the Steelers have kind of the bodies, I think, to deal with it, especially if Holcomb plays. He's just an aggressive downhill kind of smasher. He'll just come down and blow up a guard. And just kill you there on arrival. Cam Hayward's great at kind of sniffing that stuff out. So we'll kind of see. They haven't been tested much by it. But if I were the Patriots, I know, you said they haven't run outside zone. I would still, get Travion Henderson in there. And honestly, it's been the speed explosive backs that have really killed them. Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, natural wide zone backs. And I feel like Travion, while he's also very good at gap runs, obviously has that kind of profile. I would put Travion Henderson back there and just say, all right, let's see what we can do. And if it sucks, and you go away from it. But The Steelers have to show these teams, in my opinion, that they have to stop it first before anything else.
This feels like the get back week for the Patriots. It's like, all right, I know it hasn't been great, but if there's going to be a week where you try to lean into it, see if it is effective, it's probably this one. Now, through the passing game, knowing the Patriots don't have a ton of explosiveness necessarily, but they can generate it because of Josh McDaniels, because of Drake Maye's arm talent, and obviously because they've just got a reliable stable of receivers, just kind of like the Patriots special, right? No one who terrifies you, but then you look up and you're like, okay, like 8 people have 2 catches, and there's been some success. So is there any specific player who's you'd have a target on their back, if it is Cole Holcomb or even in passing situations if they take him off, that you feel the Patriots are trying to exploit through the air?
Well, both the Jets and the Seahawks have gone after Patrick Queen, and it hasn't been a man; it's been in zone. He's very easily moved by eyes. If you can, when they play cover 3 and he's the hook defender, I think I counted 4 or 5 times where Darnold just moved him and hit the hook guy right there. He had a bad game in coverage. He had a great game in run defense actually against the Seahawks, but he was rough in pass coverage. So I think he's someone I would look at. If Porter's out, I would test Brandon Echols just to see what's going on there. Echols had a great summer, and he's played really well when he's been in there in coverage. But he has to be tested, I think. But the Steelers, the kind of thing is you don't pick on a player, Taylor. You pick on the scheme. Like, that's the different thing.
McDaniel special.
I mean, ask Josh McDaniels how many times he's lined up a slot receiver and the number 3 off an empty set and hit a Steelers linebacker like that. It's happened all the time. I know.
It wasn't Scotty Miller either.
Right. And, Chris Hogan would dominate these games because of it. And the Steelers kind of are so different than other teams. With other teams, it's like, who's the matchup you look for? The Steelers just kind of run their stuff. Like, it's not really like they do some little things tweaking here or there for matchup, but they kind of just come out and be like, we're running cover 1 and cover 3 about 75% of the time. What y'all going to do? And most of the time, OCs are like, all right, let's dial up our list of cover 1, cover 3 beaters, and we got this. And so that's kind of what it is. So what you'll see the Seahawks did a lot was they high-load the Steelers, and they kind of had, a post and then a crosser, and it depended on which one the safety took, and they would hit it. Here's a stat for you, Taylor. The Steelers had really good early down success against the Seahawks. The Seahawks averaged only 2.3 yards per play on first down. Pretty good. I mean, you're feeling good about that if you're the defense. And then they got the Seahawks into 3rd and long, which is 7+ yards or more, 9 times. If you take into account outright conversions and ones that went to 4th and 1 and became converted on 4th down, the Seahawks were 7 of 9 on those attempts. 7 of 9, and when you get them into 3rd and 7 or long. That is an issue for the Steelers, is they get these teams into 3rd and long, and obviously it's a passing situation, and the Steelers will heat you up and send the blitz, and all they did was they would high-low the Steelers. They would hit Cooper Kupp over the middle. They would high-low the Steelers. Oh, they take Kupp that time. There's JSN on a crosser for 12. And that's kind of what the big thing. Or they'll do a kind of trail concept where you'll see one guy come, and then the other guy will come behind him and just hit it right there. There are so many weak points against man coverage when the Steelers run it like this. They don't kind of change anything. The quarterback can see it pre-snap and can check into the instant cover 1, cover 3 beaters. It is so static. And that's why they're struggling. Their number one issue outside of just communication right now, which is another coaching thing that I'll get on because you have to communicate, is the scheme is so vanilla and stale. And it seems like the worry is if you add rotations and disguises, the coaches are terrified that the Steelers are going to bust the coverages. That's kind of what it seems. And so, yeah, this over the middle stuff, Darnold just killed him over the middle. I'll tell you this, Taylor. They are going to run Yankee at some point in this game. The Patriots are going to run Yankee, and the Steelers better be ready for it this time because they've been beaten 2 times in a row. 2 weeks in a row they've allowed a touchdown off Yankee. Garrett Wilson caught one in week 1, and then Torrey Horton caught a wide open one last week. I think, you look at things like drive. You look at like backside digs, those slants. That has killed the Steelers. The crossers have killed the Steelers in the middle of the field. The Steelers have been able to defend the sidelines exceptionally well. And when they get you into kind of areas where you feel like maybe they're going to get a little tricky, and they got tricky in the last drive against Justin Fields, and Justin Fields was like, I don't know what to do. And they went 4 and out because the Steelers got off the field, and Jalen Ramsey was able to kind of hawk and make plays with his eyes, and it was really good to see. They kind of mixed in quarters and cover 2 off of one high sets. And it was like, oh, this is what the defense should be. But then it didn't come back last week. And you would think at some point throughout the game, the Steelers would have gone, they're gashing us over the middle of the field. The Seahawks just keep going to this middle of the field stuff, and nothing changed. And so I don't know what the coaches were doing, but it's not a matchup to watch. It is a scheme matchup to watch because the Steelers are so scheme dependent right now, and they're so predictable in coverage.
Well, if you're the Patriots, you're hoping that Kyle Williams is on the field for one of those Yankee concepts to take the top off. And if you're talking over the middle, that's where Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper thrive. So for anybody who has Patriots players in their fantasy lineup, some great insights from Nick. We will get to the Steelers offense, but first, quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. Be right back.
Shout out Prize Picks. As you guys know, they power us here. They help us out, and it helps us out when you guys download the app, use that code, and play and win. That being said, if you want to join in on it with us, just download the Prize Picks app and use that code CLNS, and you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup.
This is what happens when you put me back in the host seat after a long time of being able to just kind of be on autopilot while Mike does all this. But thank you so much to our friends at Prize Picks. Sorry I did you so dirty for that minute, but we're back and we are talking some Steelers offense. Now, Aaron Rodgers didn't work out with the Jets, obviously, but I think everyone who has a Twitter has seen those two insane throws that he had. The one that got dropped, which is an insane throw all rolling to the right to Pat Freiermuth. And then another one where he's getting taken down and still somehow delivers a rocket with pinpoint accuracy. So Aaron Rodgers still has some gas left in the tank, but I'm curious, how has he been, one, from a culture perspective? Obviously you bring in Aaron Rodgers, you're hoping his impact goes far and wide as a leader, but also when he's on the field, because it seems like a lot of the Steelers offense has been underneath, as you mentioned. They're the only NFL team with 300 yards after the catch, but I think the only downfield plays I've seen are either all play action or those kind of out and up. So what does this passing game look like, and what has Aaron Rodgers' impact been on it?
Yeah, I mean, Rodgers has had his kind of flares. It kind of is interesting. Against the Jets in week 1, the early down stuff was Arthur Smith stuff. It was the under center, it was the play action, it was the bootlegs, it was all that, right? And then the late down stuff was the A-Rod stuff. It was the gun, it was the empty, it was the slants, like triple slants, for example, an Aaron Rodgers staple. Just a bunch of different things like that. And then last week, it was weird. They went gun like 90% of the time last week, not a lot of under center stuff. And it was mostly Aaron Rodgers offense. And so the Steelers did five reps of play action. They went 1 of 5 for 7 yards. It just didn't work. I think the Steelers saw some of what the Niners kind of experienced when they went under center play action and they got kind of shut down by the Seahawks. So I think it was game plan specific. So would absolutely expect them to get back to under center play action this week and try to hit that. So they've shown some of their under center play action stuff. They've kind of shown a lot of their bootleg stuff, but they do have a lot of drop back center stuff. They kind of implement some more drop back under center game this year. That's been something that I think they've added. They've just kind of
sorry, is that to keep defenses honest, or is that more of an Aaron Rodgers preference?
I think it's to keep defenses honest, and also it makes sure so Aaron doesn't always have to turn his back to the defense. The Steelers O-line is a little bit of an adventure at times, so you don't always want to do that. That was the one key thing that Mike Tomlin was a little bit miffed about from the offensive performance in week 1, because they played so well in week 1. It was when we turn our back to the defense and try to get downfield play action shots, Aaron can't be sacked and hit right away. And that happened twice, and then they kind of deaded it for the rest of the game. So they want to hit down the field because this is a really fast offense. You look at DK, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, Roman Wilson, like all these guys can absolutely fly. So the Steelers want to attack down the field, but they got to trust their protection. So I wonder if, they start doing different things like max protecting, keeping in Darnell Washington, for example. There are definitely, I think, going to be some things that they look at and try to do that could open that game up. But it has been a lot of screens. They've loved the screen game, and they've been really good at it this year. DK Metcalf hit a chunk one off that. I believe that Jaylen Warren had another one against the Jets. Last week wasn't as great for that part of it, but they still kind of utilized kind of the flats and were able to hit things to Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell and others off the quick game. You talk about the downfield passing game. That has really kind of been mostly the out and ups, as you kind of talked about. They've targeted Metcalf down a little bit. It's either been that or Rodgers kind of utilizing his legs to try and get out of it. They have had a few plays where they've tried to attack downfield, but the protection has just kind of fallen apart. There was one play against the Seahawks where Pat Freiermuth, I don't even remember who he was going up against. I want to say it was Julian Love, and he was going up against him, and he just dusted him. But Rodgers was flush from the pocket. If he had a second, if he had like 0.5 seconds more, if he had a half second more, Rodgers sticks in there, maybe takes a shot, but it's a 50-yard touchdown. Freiermuth is wide open. The fasting offense has been very much kind of a quick game thing, but I think it's also been offensive line related. Rodgers doesn't love taking huge hits at this point in his career. It feels a little different when you're 41. It does. And so that's been something that they've looked at. But yeah, you talk about the yak game. And I look at, the kind of inability of the Patriots to tackle the past 2 weeks. That could be an issue. You get Jonnu Smith in the open field. The Steelers have really liked running these underneath crossers so far. Instead of running the deep ones, they've run like mesh a lot. They've run a lot of different things to get these guys open, slants. They've kind of utilized curl flat, just basic reads that you would think about. And it's kind of worked, honestly. And so if this Patriots team can't tackle in the open field, there could be issues because the Steelers have guys that can get yak. They have running backs that are good in the open field, and they know it.
Because there's been so much underneath action, like DK, you pay him all that money thinking there's going to be a vertical element to his game. You're not really paying $30 million for a guy who plays a lot underneath. But like you said, with the constraints of the offensive line and just kind of the way things have been going, more of an underneath threat. What would your plan be matchup-wise to keep a lid on these guys? Do you think they necessarily, if Christian Gonzalez is healthy, do they need to stick him on DK? Do you think that's a situation where, hey, Carlton Davis can probably hang with him underneath, might be a couple shots. You just got to make sure that you're in good position and play the ball. I really like Marcus Jones, honestly, in this matchup. I feel like whether it's Calvin Austin or Scotty Miller, I feel like he has the speed and the agility to keep up with one of those guys. But what would your plan be if you're the Patriots, knowing you got a pretty dominant defensive line, at the very least, a dominant interior duo, and you're going to want to protect your linebackers as well? Because I'll be honest, I don't know if it's going to be Spillane and Ellis this week again, if we're going to see more of Marte Mapu. We saw him get subbed in at a point because the linebackers are really kind of getting toasted, and Mapu's one of the best athletes on the team. So if you see more of Mapu in those passing situations, how would you try to make sure that you are keeping the Steelers' pass game quiet?
Yeah, I mean, I would walk them down and say, try to go over the top on us. Because I trust, if I were the Patriots and I look at their defensive line, I look at guys like Landry, and we'll see if White plays. But, Milton Williams and Barmore, I'll be like, all right, let's go downfield, because I don't think you can hold up. Like, that's what I would say. I would take away the slants. I would take away the screens. I would tell my guys to trigger downhill. And so that's something I would absolutely do. And so I think keeping a lid on them is, somewhat, bringing kind of your splits in a little bit, playing tighter coverage, not playing a ton of off man, giving them space. Don't give them layups, right? Don't give them the easiness. I will say, I think the Steelers have been hiding some of their tight end heavy stuff. They've run a lot of 12, but it's been a lot of run plays out of 12. And all summer, they've gone to 12 and 13 personnel a lot. And I wonder if you talk about Marcus Jones being out there, for example. I wonder if the Steelers would look at it and say, we love that matchup for Jonnu. Like, I think they would love that matchup for Jonnu Smith.
Yeah.
And we haven't really seen the vertical element of the tight ends. And I think that's where the Steelers, up the seams on kind of corners where they can kind of box out smaller guys. The Steelers love Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth in those situations, and they've even tried to get Darnell Washington starting kind of getting in the passing game. Darnell had his most active training camp as a pass catcher this year. So I think the Steelers are going to look probably tight end heavy. So if I were kind of looking at what the Patriots would do, I would say, you know what? Go over the top on us, because we don't think you can protect against our line. This is a really good line. Look at what the Seahawks did with just 4 rushers. They have a very good line too. And they kind of just, did different stunts, different looks. They would mug the A-gap and drop out. Every now and then they would send somebody just to keep them honest and just keep your eyes honest. But the Steelers O-line has not picked up stunts very well, and Rodgers has also been a little tentative to get rid of the football. He's held on to it a little longer than he should on some plays, or he's still trying to get through those little escape hatches, but he doesn't have the explosiveness to get out of them anymore. So he's run into a few sacks. So that's what I would do if I were the Patriots. It's not as much how do you keep the lid on it. It's how do we not let them catch a 5-yard pass and turn into 30? Because that's what happened to the Jets, man. They got toasted after the catch. And then they kind of got dunked on down the field by Calvin Austin, out of all people. And I mean, not that Calvin Austin can't get open, but he wasn't open on them. He mossed a dude. Like, he's 5'8", but don't let it fool you. He can go up and high point the football. So he's somebody that actually can do that. The other thing the Steelers have been doing recently is they've been utilizing kind of a big 11 personnel, I would describe it as, where they have DK and Calvin or Roman Wilson on the field, and then they bring on Ben Skowronek, who is kind of a big blocker type, and they've utilized him kind of this. You see nowadays where it's more of a tight end, where you have like H inserts and different things like that. Well, Ben Skowronek will bring the safety or the nickel into the box, and he'll just kick out the safety. So instead of having your linebacker be kind of the spill player, the Steelers will force you into the safety being the spill player and kick you out. And sometimes they'll do that to success. So that's something to watch too. You kind of got to match your personnel correctly against the Steelers. They do a lot of mixing and matching. What they haven't done a lot of yet, but they did a little bit last week, and I think they're going to continue to ramp it up, is they will come out in 12 and 13 personnel, and they will spread you out. They will condense you. They will try to kind of isolate matchups out of empty. Rodgers is so good pre-snap, just finding different things, different checks, hot routes, things like that. He is a master of that. I would also say to the Patriots, make sure you're on your P's and Q's, because you have 12 guys on the field. Rodgers is going to notice it. He plays the chess game as well as anybody with linebackers. So there's a lot of different things like that. So the Steelers have been kind of building out the series, the shotgun series that involves these tight ends, and we just haven't seen a lot of the plays off it yet. I think Arthur Smith's kind of waiting to pull it out. The other rabbit to pull out, and the one I would say to keep an eye on for the downfield stuff, is Roman Wilson. He has kind of played a lot of love of the game routes. Hasn't really been in the route progression. It's been a lot of corners, a lot of crossers, and things like that. Roman Wilson, when he has been kind of utilized as a guy, he gives full effort. He will clear out the underneath, and if you don't win your matchups underneath, the Steelers will kind of target that underneath area. That's one way they've cleared space. I think at some point, though, Roman Wilson is actually going to become the actual target on these plays, and he's so explosive off the line of scrimmage. If you don't get hands on him, even for a guy like Marcus Jones who can fly, Roman Wilson's explosiveness, when he crosses your face and goes, he will buzz right by you. So you better be on your P's and Q's for that. So there are different things I think the Steelers haven't pulled out yet offensively. But if I were the Patriots, I'd be focused on the quick game and the screens and taking those away.
The matchup stuff is going to be very interesting. So if they do go a lot of 13 personnel, we've seen the Patriots use a lot of big nickels. So use it like 7 snaps the first week. We saw more of it last week where Kyle Duggar, usually he's going to be that slot defender, kind of like a Jabril Peppers type and what he was doing when he was here. But also we've seen Alex Austin in that role, and he's probably going to be a backup if Christian Gonzalez is back in the mix. So I wonder, how much do you respect some of the tight ends as blockers? Are you saying, hey, I'd rather have Alex Austin in there versus Adele Pettis? That's going to be fun to watch. Also, you mentioned the stunts. Milton Williams' game-ending sack came on a stunt. And while he deservedly gets a lot of the credit for it, you also have to acknowledge that Harold Landry, just his presence of coming inside, actually kind of split the coverage so that Milton Williams had a pure one-on-one and was able to capitalize on it. Also, for Patriots fans who are kind of curious how exactly Skowronek's role works, he's basically the Steelers version of Matt Collins. It's, I think, like a pretty fair way to kind of – these teams are very similar in a lot of ways, I'm not going to lie. Like the ways they struggle on defense, looking through the stats, they're pretty much bad at all of the same things. And then I feel like a lot of their skill players, there's some overlap there as well. I want to get to your prediction on how the Patriots can win and how the Steelers could potentially win. But first, quick word from our friends at Monarch with sound this time. Be right back.
Like it or not, money is everything. And oftentimes, people have no idea where their finances are. Whether it's 401ks, investment accounts, or property, a lack of awareness leaves money on the table every single day. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Feel organized and confident in your finances with Monarch Money, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or phone. And right now, just for our listeners, Monarch is offering 50% off your first year. I started using Monarch recently, and I feel like I now have complete control over my portfolio because of it. The app is super easy to use, and it's also built for people with busy lives, juggling personal life, jobs, and more. Monarch is truly the best way to get a handle on your finances. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code PATRIOTS at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code PATRIOTS.
All right, buddy, predictions time. I'm not big on scores because I'm afraid of numbers. So you have the option to give a score. You don't have to, but I do want your perspective on what happens in this game if the Patriots win and what happened if the Steelers win.
For the Steelers, I feel like we see a rejuvenated defense. That's what I think is going to be a big part of it. You know, they maybe figure out their coverage issues and the communication things. They're able to stop the run more consistently, I think, is a big part of it. If they're able to stop the run, they're able to tee off a little more on Drake Maye, for example, send their blitzes. Maybe they'll feel a little more comfortable kind of mixing things up. So I think that's a big part of it. This defense has to play well. I just don't think the Steelers' kind of blueprint of getting into a shootout like they did week one is necessarily something they're going to do. They could do it probably against the Patriots, and at least it would be a game, but I don't think they want to get into that horse race with anybody. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think on offense, it's can they kind of find some fluidity running the football? I think that's a big thing. The Steelers only averaged 3.4 yards per carry, but it was a lot of short yardage stuff where they would get 4 or 5 yards off their short yardage stuff. 43% success rate for Jaylen Warren when toting the rock. Pretty good, honestly. He had a 50% success rate in the first half. They kind of found some things last week with Warren. They were just kind of running inside zone and duo and just kind of cratering the interior against guys like Leonard Williams and Jaron Reed, which, I mean, no slouches at all. I do like what they have with Frazier, McCormick, and Sayamalo on the interior. So I do think that's something to think about. But I think for the Steelers, the big thing is going to be, honestly, if they stop the run and stop bleeding in pass coverage, just playing the good basics that they should be playing. I think that's a big part of it. So eliminating their own dumb mistakes and kind of getting a little bit more innovative in the kind of schematic part of that. And then offensively, if they can hit some of these big yak plays to keep drives efficient. If the Patriots cannot tackle in space, you know, if they're going to let DK Metcalf get loose on a slant, he can very easily turn what might be a 9-yard catch into a 65-yard touchdown. Don't let DK Metcalf get out of the gate. I think that's part of it. So kind of this offense has been pretty sporadic down to down, but they've been explosive. And that's been something for the Steelers that has allowed them to still put up scores. So I think that's kind of a big way for the Steelers. So explosive plays through the air, a decent, efficient run game, and just not a complete disaster defensively probably is the formula for the Steelers. I think for the Patriots, you know, it's very similar to how I think the Jets and the Seahawks won. And what it is you kind of run the ball decently enough. It doesn't even have to necessarily be, you know, you're good down in and down out. I mean, the Seahawks, I think, only had like a 27% success rate against the Steelers and still, you know, had an 100-yard rusher in that game, and Kenneth Walker, who averaged like 8 yards per carry because he had 4 explosive runs. So if you can just get some explosives on the ground against the Steelers, kind of force them out of some of their pressure stuff, and more importantly, take advantage of what is a secondary right now that is kind of being hung out to dry by their staff. I think that's going to be a big thing if you can convert on third downs. And I think when you look at the Patriots overall, the big thing that they have to do is to make sure I think the defense is almost more important in this game than their offense, because while I think the Steelers could potentially slow them down, I think if you kind of look at the Steelers offense, they have a blueprint to where even if the Steelers defense necessarily is awful, they can actually maybe put up some points, especially given what the Patriots have struggled at. Like, they're bad in space and they're missing tackles. I mean, the Steelers can very easily turn quick game into 10-yard rips or 8-9 yard, screens and stuff like that, which can be an extension of their run game. So, when I kind of come on here and talk about what their vision of winning, I think tackling in space is a big one, limiting yak, and trying to get off some explosive runs and taking advantage of what has been a damaged Steelers secondary.
So we've got the keys. Now, who do you think executes them the best? Who comes out on top in this game?
So I think the Steelers, I feel the energy from the Steelers locker room that tells me they're pissed. I feel like it's a veteran-laden, pissed locker room. I was talking with Aaron Rodgers. You can just tell. I think the team has a bit of an edge this week to them. They are not happy with how they performed. Slay and Ramsey are kind of down to business right now, trying to talk through these communication issues. And I do think, given who the Steelers have on defense, you look at their secondary, it's Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay. It's like, it's not some scrubs, right? And their safeties are veterans. They're Chuck Clark and Jabril Peppers and Juan Thornhill. It's guys that have been around and have done this. So you kind of have a hard time believing communication breakdowns are going to continue. So as long as the Steelers do some basic things, I think they started to move in the right direction on the run defense because they were a little bit better down in, down out. I think the passing defense is still a disaster, but I think they have the group to do it. And then the offense, I think, will at least stay afloat. I kind of look at what the Patriots' weaknesses are, and I think it just kind of is – it's a tough one for the Patriots when you think about how many yak guys the Steelers have. Like Jonnu, it could be a definite issue, I think, for the Patriots in this game. DK is an issue. If you let Jaylen Warren get into space, I think it's trouble. I think that's going to be something. And I think Jaylen Warren's going to get more workload this week. He had 18 touches last week. I think he's probably going to be in the 25 touches range this week. They've kind of talked about ramping him up more and more, and he's just very dynamic and tough to bring down in space. So I'm going to say the Steelers come out on top in this one just because I think there can be some regression for them on how bad they've been. Like, I don't think Peyton Wilson and Keanu Benton are going to be this bad every week, for example. They're talented players. I don't necessarily think they're going to blow every other coverage over the middle like they have the past few weeks. So I'm going to predict some positive regression for the Steelers, but I will say would not be surprised if they just continue to look off when the Patriots score 30 plus, because the Steelers have allowed 30 plus to the Jets and the Seahawks. It's not exactly like they're facing Lamar Jackson and and these other Josh Allen and these top players. Like right now, those are the 21st and 25th ranked offenses in EPA per play. So never doubt the Steelers defense.
And I have the Patriots, but also I don't like the idea of a pissed off Steelers team, especially when Mike Vrabel's been getting on you for an entire week. And you do have a lot of veterans who understand what the standard is versus maybe a bunch of younger players who might not be able to rise to the occasion. I think it's going to be competitive, but Drake Maye coming off what I think was the best game of his career so far, his young career, of course. And the fact that we know what Josh McDaniels typically does against this defense. Like you said, this is a Mike Tomlin defense, and Josh McDaniels with that familiarity, I think that's going to make a significant difference. Patriots offensive line, I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last week. This is a very different challenge, but they started to take some steps in the right direction. And this defense has gotten a lot of crap for the Patriots. The defensive line is very impressive. And I think the tackling really comes down to Robert Spillane more than anyone and Christian Ellis. Christian Ellis hasn't been terrible, but he's got to get better. Spillane had some really bad moments, but seeing him leaving the locker room, Vrabel was congratulating everyone, and he was pissed. Vrabel was trying to be nice to him, and he had his head down. He's shaking it. Spillane, that's a pro's pro, and he's throwing tackles with no arms and everything like that. So I think that he will improve. If that happens, I do think the Patriots have a shot to win this one. I don't want to say handily, but I think, the fourth quarter won't exactly be a roller coaster. But if they don't tackle, and if there is any kind of offensive regression, if we don't see another step forward for the run game like we saw last week, then I do think that they could end up falling to the Steelers team because there's too many veterans, and they do have the kind of head coach that you don't want to play when they're coming off a bad week. So, Nick, I've already kept you for longer than I said I was going to. Thank you so much, pal. We got a home and home coming up, so we got to get out of here. But before we do, please let the people know where they can find you and what great previews you got coming out that they can look out for.
Yeah, make sure to follow me on Twitter at FarabaugHFB. The articles are all over PennLive.com/Steelers. I have plenty of things. If you want to watch me rant about how awful the Steelers' defensive scheme is, I have plenty of things coming over there because I go much more in depth about it and go player by player. And if you kind of want to see how the Patriots can exploit what I think is probably the worst defensive scheme in football right now, go for it. So that'll all come out on the YouTube channel, the Steelers Blitz on PennLive.
Appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much for stopping by for the first time of what I'm sure will be many. And thank you all, as always, for watching. Now, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we will see you next time. Peace, y'all.